And now we are proceeding to the next panel dedicated to culture as a common ground. This panel will be moderated by Mrs. Julia Mackiewicz from the Polish Institute in Tel Aviv. So Julia, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's my greatest pleasure to lead this panel. I'm very sorry for the delay and for keeping waiting our panelists. I would like to also welcome several friends, partners of the Polish Institute who I've seen among the attendees of the webinar, especially Alex Danzig and Mr. Muszyński, the mayor of Włodawa, president of Sopot, Jacek Karnowski. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, this afternoon. Before we start to our panel, as the Polish Institute celebrates its 20th birthday this year, I would like to share with you our short video that presents our activities.
Together with our Israeli partners, we organize dozens of events. We present best Polish movies, introduce you to new trends in design and music, invite you to Polish theater, discuss literature and our shared past. We even teach you how to pronounce prześcieradło at Polish language courses. And it's all with you, all for you.
המכון הפולני מסייע בשיתופי פעולה תרבותיים באמת יוצא דופן, ואפשר לי להגשים חלום להביא לארץ את מיטב אומני הכרזות הפולניים, ללמד ולהציג תערוכה במכון הטכנולוגי בחולון HIT. המכון הפולני מחבר אותי לשפת האם שלי, לקולות, לריחות, לטעמים של הילדות, ומעורר בי געגועים ונוסטלגיה לבית רחוק.
בשבילי המכון הפולני הוא אחד המכונים הבולטים, הפעילים והמשפיעים. אנחנו נוסעים לפולין לראות הצגות, לראות את הדברים שנעשים שם, מייבאים משם מחזות בתחום שלי שהוא תחום התיאטרון. יש שם את הידע, יש שם את החריצות, יש שם את הנכונות.
אנשי המכון הפולני אנשי הסתדרות המורים יצרו קשר לגשר בין המדינות בהיבטים התרבותיים והחינוכיים. בלעדי המכון הפולני זה בעצם לא היה קורה.
הקשר שלנו, של פסטיבל הקולנוע ירושלים עם המכון הפולני, מאפשר לנו יחד להביא תוכן מרתק, עכשווי, משובח, רלוונטי לקהל הישראלי. כיף גדול.
Last year's proved that we actually experienced a renaissance of Polish-Israeli culture and educational exchange. Polish Institute is not only about culture, it's about education, about film, all kinds of spectrum of human-to-human exchange and productions. We create floor for meetings and encounters from both sides. And this panel is actually devoted to practitioners of the relations who reach out to the other side to have a dialogue. Let me introduce you to our honorable guests who will share with us their professional experience and personal stories about creating the grounds for such unique collaborations. Ambassador Itamar Rabinovich is Professor Emeritus of Middle Eastern History at the Tel Aviv University, Deputy Chair of the Institute of National Security in Tel Aviv, and Senior Non-Resident Fellow at Brookings. He was Israel's ambassador in Washington and President of Tel Aviv University. His latest book is Rabin's biography. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Mr. Janusz Makuch, the founder and director of the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow. Mr. Yossi Lemel, graphic artist, curator, lecturer, a creator of very successful exhibition of Polish poster in Israel. And last but not least, Mrs. Karolina Przewrocka-Aderet, journalist, a writer, and correspondent of Tygodnik Powszechny. And she's been living in Israel for the last few years. Welcome you all. I'd like to address my first question to Professor Rabinovich. You're associated with the Washington Institute, who is actually supporting the Herzl Center. Herzl Center is a unique institution that is also has been founded in Poland. Could you introduce us to the idea of Center Herzl in Poland, and also how does it help to build the relations between Poland and Israel? And why was it important to set it up in Poland?
Thank you very much for the kind introduction and for the question. My own field is not Israel studies. It's actually, as you indicated, Middle Eastern studies, but Israel studies is a relatively new discipline that is about 50 years old, discipline or area of study that for many years has existed somewhat uncomfortably between Jewish studies and Middle Eastern studies. And then a group of scholars in the field decided that it should be defined and developed as a separate, self-standing field of study. About 7 years ago, together with a philanthropic family from Oklahoma, the Schusterman family, I founded an institute in Washington called the Israel Institute with the purpose of developing further the field of Israel studies, and first and foremost in the United States, but also in other parts of the world, particularly in Europe. We found partners in different countries. In Poland, there are Israel studies also in other universities, but the main center for Jewish and Israel studies is the Jagiellonian University. I see that we have 2 faculty members from the Jagiellonian with us. I noticed that in addition to Eva, we also have Dr. Diduch with us. I was surprised to find out that in the Institute of Jewish Studies, there are almost 150 graduate students, Polish, not necessarily Jewish or probably not Jewish, who study Jewish studies, and quite a few of them also interested in Israel studies. And the Israel Institute in Washington beginning to work with them. At a later phase, I found a way of collaborating with the Herzl Center on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem in order to create several Herzl centers for Israel studies in European countries. The first 3 are the one established at the Jagiellonian, then in Bucharest and in Prague, and we are now moving on to Sofia and to Belgrade. So soon there will be 5 Herzl centers operating in Europe. The idea is to provide groups such as the group dealing with Israel studies at the Jagiellonian with the means to create new courses, to offer scholarships to advanced students who want to write graduate dissertations on Israel, to bring additional speakers, to organize conferences, and this indeed has been the case. And our partnership, that is to say, the Israel Institute in Washington and the Herzl Center in the Jagiellonian, has been exemplary. And personally, I've met here in Tel Aviv groups of students and faculty who came from Krakow. I had the pleasure of visiting the center, not the center, but the university in Krakow. And, you know, I need to add a personal angle that is always present, or often present in the relationship of Israelis to Poland. My mother came from a very small town, 2 hours east of Krakow, or 1 hour east of Rzeszów on the road to to Ukraine now. And my visit to Krakow was an opportunity for me and my family, my wife and 2 daughters, for the first time to visit my mother's small town, to meet the Polish neighbors of the family, and to close something that has always been a gaping hole in my own consciousness. So when I must say, when I land in Poland, and I've been to Poland several times in the last decade or so, it's not like landing in just another country. There's a special feeling that I think derives from my, let's call it Polish heritage, and therefore when I pursue our cooperation with the Jagiellonian in Israel studies, I do it with a particular passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Staying still in Krakow, my second question is to Mr. Janusz Makuch, the director of the Jewish Culture Festival. The Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow is the most impressive Jewish festival in the world. It's been over 30 years that festival connects artists, audiences. How would you tell, what would you tell us how this process over the years evolved and how Polish and Israeli attitudes over the time changed?
We are delayed, right? Okay, how much time do I have?
We need to keep it up to 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me here.
But there'll be 2 rounds, so yeah. So
Guys, shalom, nice to see all of you. Well, I'll try to compress myself 5 minutes. So, yeah, actually it's 32 years because the first Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, I want to emphasize it very strongly, took place in 1988. So we are relatively young guys, young people who knew almost nothing about the Jewish culture. But on the other hand, it was a time where the interest with the Jewish culture arose in Poland among the young people. So we could watch, for instance, lovely movie called Fiddler on the Roof. And a lot of people thought that Fiddler on the Roof, presents just a real shtetl life, which was, of course, nonsense. But we were overwhelmed by the traditional Jewish culture, people who just jump into this amazing sea of the Jewish culture. And thank God, in 1989, everything has been changed, also because of the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, of course, so communists collapsed. And in 1990, I made my first trip abroad. And of course, I went straight to the Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, to Israel. And I met people, and I met completely different reality. And I thought myself, Makuch, what's going on? I thought that the Jewish culture is a culture, petrified in the shtetl, and we dance together and we sing together. If I were a rich man, it's a bullshit, of course. And I met the real people from the different part of the world who came to the country in 1948, and they built this country. They came from the more than 100 countries. And everyone schlepped, with the bag of the tradition, which arose from the country where they spent centuries. Suddenly I realized that I'm facing the culture which I could define as the diversified culture, vitality, and the full of passion and the love. So I decided, okay, this is the center of the Jewish world. This is the center of the Jewish life. This is the center of the Jewish culture. Let's focus on it. It was a matter of love, of course. I fell in love in Yerushalayim, so it was such easy for me. And we decided to invite more and more people from Israel who reflects all this diversified, beautiful, colorful Jewish world. And one of the first artists invited by me to Krakow was this unbelievably crazy and amazing Moroccan Israeli musician, Shlomo Bar, and Habera Hativit. And I think it was the first time when the people from Poland and so-called Ashkenazim saw the Mizrahi on the stage in Krakow. it was unforgettable, just unforgettable. No one understood what he's singing about, because he usually sang, of course, in Hebrew, and not in Ivrit, in Hebrew and in Arabic language. But since first moment we saw and we felt that this is a real world. And, for me, the most important date in the history of the Jewish people is in 1948, when the State of Israel was established. And when I mentioned that people came from all over the world and built this state with a culture. And, in Poland, I saw young people like me. I was a relatively young guy at that time, who were hungry of knowledge of the contemporary Jewish and especially Israeli culture, music, visual arts, literature, everything. On the other side, when I took a look at the Israeli, especially young Israeli musicians, they were eager to share their music with the, mostly non-Jewish audience in Krakow. So we, without our, or beyond of our consciousness, beyond of our consciousness, we started to build a space of common, pure culture, where we would be able to meet, not necessarily meet on the so-called bridge of, absolutely, reconciliation. Have you seen this bridge in your life? Where it exists? Of course it doesn't. So we just built together the space of mutual respect and the mutual understanding over the bloody river of history, over the trauma of Holocaust, because we realized that 6 years of Shoah cannot eclipse, on the one hand, 1,000 years of a vibrant Jewish culture created by the Polish Jews in my soil. On the other hand, it cannot overshadow this vibrant vitality, phenomenal, colorful, full of passion and love, Israeli culture created in Israel. So basically, that's what happened. We are the people of deeds. We've been organizing this festival from 32 years, and I strongly believe, not only believe, I just simply know, that deeds not only should, but must always precede words. Words, it's a matter of politics, and the politicians, don't trust them. So that's actually what was beginning. So it is a process, you know what I mean? It's a process. Don't think that you can achieve anything. If someone will tell you that, we want to achieve the reconciliation, don't trust him. This is the never-ending educational process aimed at the systematic, first of all, mental transformation of the people of goodwill from the both sides. And I believe that we can do it through the living culture, not only from the past. Past is very important, of course, we cannot change it, but through the living culture. Culture focused on today, because our future begins today, not tomorrow. So it's a never-ending educational process. And actually that's all about a Jewish Culture Festival. So we'll see what happens. And someone mentioned that, post-COVID area is coming and will create the new world. There is a beautiful sentence in Yiddish, a Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. So the man is, thinking and planning and this and that, and God is laughing. Let's focus on today, guys. Let's focus on today. Today is a beautiful day, especially in Krakow. It's a sunny day, even in our Knesset, like in yours. And on your streets and on our streets is a war. And here in Poland, it's a war against the women. And we are sitting right now, we are talking about our future and cooperation, and people are suffering because of the few stupid bandits who are called themselves politicians. Don't trust them.
That's why we're here, and we're building human relations, because this is most guarantees better success, I think.
Julia, I think there's no guarantee. There's only negative guarantee. If we will not do it, we'll get nothing.
That's why we are here with you. Thank you, Janusz, for sharing with us this story and answering the question. I would like to ask Yossi Lemel, who has this very interesting personal bond with Poland, how his experience and roots helped him in the creation process, and also how learning Polish helped him to reconnect his art with his roots.
Okay, hi everybody. I think there are some keywords for my feelings to Poland and to Polish people. Like Janusz, Mr. Janusz Makuch said, it's a lot about passion. We share the same passion towards building a bridge. It's the most important thing, to create a bridge between two people that because of the horrible 6 or 7 years were separated brutally, and we cannot forget the past of almost 1,000 years. And I'm motivated by this nostalgia and emotia in all my works so far. I will start short historical points. I was confronting the wonderful Polish design in my art school 40 years ago by chance. And it was the impact was so amazing that I kept this influence till I had the right moment last year when I had the success and the luck with the help of the Polish Institute to bring 5 fantastic Polish poster artists from Poland and 1 from Paris to Israel to have an exhibition, which was a great success. And I felt I'm doing my job, the task that I was made to do in connecting the two cultures, the Jewish Israeli culture and the Polish culture. But as long as I'm, like Janusz said, the new Israeli, I cannot get separated from the past for good and bad. And I'm not, as long as I'm getting older and older, I'm more connected to my past. I have the understanding that it's has such an important place in my whole identity. And as long as I was a captain in the army, in high-tech companies and the most modern technologies and the most advanced 21st century space programs, I'm deep down inside also part of something that the Israelis try to ignore, or also the shtetl. It's inside me, and in my last exhibition that was shown last year in Warsaw, I made a journey in the footsteps of my grandfather back to Radomsko, where he was a chassid in the Radomsko court. And this was an unbelievable, moving, emotional experience, going back to my roots, finding my roots in Poland, which I was very lucky to have this opportunity, and to show it in the academy in Warsaw. My exhibition was one of my greatest moments. And this was helped by learning again, Polish was my first mother tongue, but I suppressed it, and then it erupted a couple of years ago. And then I went to the Polish Institute to sharpen my basic Polish. And it helped me to understand more and more and more, not only the Polish culture, the Polish people, and the connection is getting better. I think a language is a culture. And the moment you even understand just maybe basic, you can get much better relate to Polish people or other people with their languages. So language is also a bridge. And about your question, what was your question? Because actually, I could talk an hour or two.
Well, I think you pretty much explained to us, or you answered how you reconnect through your roots, and but I actually wanted to ask you.
Just a moment, just a second.
I wanted to ask you about the first encounter with Poland, because
just a second. I will have to mention that 12 years ago I had an exhibition in Poznan, a journey in the footsteps of my mother and my daughter, and it's behind me. Here's my daughter on the rooftop. My daughter is a fiddlerette on the roof of the house where my mother was born in Benjin, near Katowice. And this was the second journey I made. I made 4 journeys in the footsteps of my ancestors, my mother, my father, my grandfathers. And still I have a lot to achieve. I'm already in my research. I arrived approximately to the year 1475 in Poland. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. A research that I'm making together with people, relatives in Canada and United States, in Europe. It's a fantastic journey to the past.
But also you've been bringing Polish artists here, not only the Polish poster, but before you were also making relations with Polish artists and introducing them to Israeli.
Because it started like 25 years ago when I was invited to the Warsaw Biennial, the poster biennial. And since then, I started to create real friendships with the Polish artists. And it developed to this dream that I had to bring some of them to show the Israeli public. And like, I have to tell it again because your wonderful video couldn't work, but maybe you can see it later. So we
actually enclose the video in the chat. So for those who want to see it again and hear it, yeah.
We created this book catalog of Polish masters, Polish poster masters, Polish look. And as you can see, like beautiful works of Polish masters. We created relationship between universities, and I think this is my small contribution philosophically and theoretically and practically in building this bridge.
It's not so small. It's actually a huge project. Thank you, Yossi. Thank you also for your answer. And we will talk a little bit more about your experience later on in the second round. Now my question goes to Karolina Przewrocka-Aderet, who's been living in Israel for the last few years, working as a journalist, and made extensive research about the Polish roots of Israel. And it had this expression in latest books she published in Poland. It was a huge success and actually got reprinted again. And I would like to ask Karolina, how can you relate to this? How can you describe this phenomena that such books get very popular in Poland? The Poles like to read about the Jewish culture, the Israeli culture, and also do you think there's a relation between Polish immigrants, the input of the Polish immigrants in the building of this country, and it has its expression, it translates itself also for the relations?
First of all, good afternoon. And we were not able to hear the presentation of Nili Amit, but I just wanted to tell you that I see here at least two people thanks to whom I'm today in Israel. And I'm in a way a product of their incredible work, which is Nili and Janusz Makuch. Listen, I'm 33 and actually I was born in Kraków, and I remember my father taking me to the Jewish festival in Kraków since I was a very little child. And this is how I fell in love with the Jewish topic. So thank you, Janusz, for this. I feel like a child of your deeds, and also thank you to Nili, who accepted me in 2009 or 10 a project made by Polin Museum, which was a project for Polish and Israeli students. The project's name was PIE, and thanks to her also I'm here today. So as you can see, I'm the visible proof for the fact that these relations are happening, and I'm building them today by myself, not only writing as a journalist or writing recently a book, but also having my own family, Polish and Israeli, and raising a child in a mixed marriage, which is not always easy, but it's extremely fascinating. And I'm telling you, it is possible. It is possible to create even such a close cooperation between our two nations. So, but coming back to your topics, well, my book is actually about the different waves of aliyot. So the immigrations to Israel that I described more into the perspective, from the perspective of the Polish Jews who came in that time. So I'm mentioning, for example, the Grabski Aliyah in the 20s, or the fourth Aliyah, through the Aliyot of the time of the war and after the war. I'm of course mentioning the Gomulka Aliyah, and after that also the famous March 68 Aliyah. And each of them had a different impact because it was happening in a different historical background, and Polish Jews were bringing also different things to the Eretz Israel, what happened later to be the state of Israel. So if you ask me about what was the impact of Polish Jews, of course I wouldn't be able to say it in a few minutes because it's my whole research and it's very complicated. Also because of the fact there is a question of the identity. So if you say about Polanim, the Polish Jews, each of them would have a different explanation on who they are. Some of them would say we are Jews from Poland, we are Polish Jews, we are Poles with Jewish roots. So depending from that, if I'm looking for some Polishness in Israel, it is very much complicated by the fact that not all of them really alluded to their Polish past. Like, for example, the ones who are the politicians who are the first ones to be named when you ask about who were the famous Polish Jews in Israel. Of course, you say David Ben-Gurion. Of course, you say Menachem Begin, but they did not really all the time speak about their Polishness. In contrary, so my question was actually more facing our today's topic, so the culture, because in the culture I found that what was the most important for me. I found this Polishness in a very subtle things, which I'm actually describing in the biggest amount in this book. I found it in the patterns of behavior, of very certain manners, of love to certain food, of way of dressing, of here I'm seeing Lea Ganor, whose father was also, she was the one to tell me the amazing story of her father wearing a very specific chapka and very specific clothes. Polish Jews in a different periods of times, they brought their culture with themselves. And we were talking here about people who were of course, also coming from different backgrounds, because some of them coming from a Yiddish culture, not speaking Polish at home, others coming definitely from assimilated families. And these people who went through the Polish gymnasia, from Polish schools, had amazing knowledge of Polish language, of Polish history, having these shelves full of books directly from Poland, knowing them by heart, by the way. It's amazing how incredible they speak Polish. You know, you can hear among the Polish Jews, you can hear this amazing pre-war Polish, which sounds so crystal in our ears. I cannot even compare. I feel ashamed when I speak with them, because my language is so shallow and so short and so not complicated, and their language is something really worth to hear. And this was one of the reasons also for me to write this book. And you also asked about some more. I wouldn't like to finish before naming some concrete people who really brought something really concrete to Israeli culture, no matter of how they really alluded to their Polish past. We can call here the Bronisław Huberman from Częstochowa, who was the creator of the Palestinian Philharmonic Orchestra, which later became the Israeli National Orchestra, or Nahum Tzemach, who was the one who in Białystok created the beginning of something what later became the Habima national scene, or Aryeh Sharon, which comes from the city where my father was born, from Yarosław, and became later in Israel one of the most famous Bauhaus student, but also the architect. So we can name here these people, and always remember that their own identity was different, that their own definition of their Polishness and Jewishness was different. But this was something which really fascinated me. And you asked about this whole phenomena in the Polish literature that is happening. Yes, of course, we have. I wasn't even worried about the fact that the book is not going to sell in Poland, because there is such a huge interest in the Polish market, in the Polish-Jewish relations, in Israel as well, in the last years, especially since we started to have this cheap flights, and everyone is flying and everyone wants to know something more about Israel, and they are so fascinated about Israel and about what is happening in Israel. So yes, I was not worried that it's going to fail, also because of the fact that I was not writing it on the empty ground. I don't know if our Israeli friends know about it, because I have a feeling that this topic is not really known here in Israel, and also not really noticed in Israeli media. But in the 90s and in early 20s, so after 89, I would say, so after the democratic change in Poland, so the most important one, we had a huge amount of publications about Polish-Jewish relations, written by Jews, but not only Jews, memoirs, reportages, which is the genre that I write, poems, diaries, also literature, everything attached somehow to the topic of the Polish-Jewish past, which made people really think about what does it mean? What does it mean that our past is also Jewish? That the Jewish history is a part of the Polish history, and Jewish means also Polish. And of course, in compilation with the festivals, with theater, with this amazing cultural scene, it gave an incredible space also for the most important and for the most hard topics, like, for example, the huge debate which we had by the end of 90s at the beginning of 2000s about Polish anti-Semitism, about what happened during the Second World War, about the involvement of some Poles in crimes against the Jews. This discussion happened in Poland. It made a huge discussion. It was a big boom in the literature world, in the world of culture, and we really made it, and culture in Poland made it. Of course, people take their own positions in this debate. This is okay, but this debate happened, and if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that this was the biggest debate in our region about these relations towards the Jewish past of our country. Unfortunately, what was so successful in the culture field was not really successful in the politics field, but we are not here to talk about the negative patterns. We are rather wanting to see about the good things. So I think that the culture made it. And I think that culture is an amazing platform for us to speak openly, because only an openness in this very hard topics is giving us the success. And I can assure you, also from my personal experience as living in a Polish-Israeli journalist family marriage, these discussions, they are sometimes extremely hard, very loud. Sometimes it happens as well, but only the honesty and only hearing of each other and only understanding each other's position is bringing really good fruits and is bringing us towards the future. And I'm very proud of the fact that my book was published in Poland, and I hope for more to come.
Oh, well, we wish you this, Karolina. Thank you so much. Taking in consideration what you said, that the cultural grounds actually pass better the exam of bringing people closer. I have a question to Professor Rabinovich, giving his experience both in diplomacy academy. Mr. Ambassador, what do you think about what's the most important platform for the Polish and Israeli nations to focus on in the coming years, to make sure that we continue to enjoy fully the vibrant relations that would bring them to another level?
Okay. I'd like to begin with a short story. Around 2003, when I believe Mr. Kwasniewski was the president of Poland, and his national security advisor was called Mr. Shibiec, they approached an Israeli shipping magnate who was then building his ships in Gdansk, and asked him to set up a Polish-Israeli strategic dialogue. I went to meet Mr. Shibiec, we discussed it, and he said that President Kwasniewski's wish was to create a platform in which Poles and Israelis could discuss mutual issues, mutual vision, like two important countries, Poland being an important European country, part of the Union, part of NATO, and so forth. Israel, having its own importance in the Middle East. He said, because we are not happy with the fact that for many Israelis, Poland is just sort of, quote unquote, the cemetery of the Jewish people, the delegations that come to visit the Auschwitz and so forth, that we don't want to deny this. We do not wish to put it under the carpet. It's part of reality and it will remain so. But there are other issues and other dimensions. So we organized the first such dialogue. It took place in the presidential palace. And then there was a reciprocation. A Polish delegation came to Tel Aviv. Unfortunately, it ended there, I think, but the need remains. In part, such dialogues exist today with PISM, the Polish Institute for International Affairs, that has I think a dialogue with Elnet and dialogue with the INSS at Tel Aviv University. I think we heard quite a bit earlier about very rich cultural relationship. I don't believe I heard anything about a wonderful book about the Jewish Messiah, Frank, written by a great Polish writer. It's a major achievement to penetrate the depth of Jewish mysticism and religion at that time. So I think we need to look at the manifold relationship, cultural, strategic, economic. I mean, they all exist. And it is the task of the two national leaderships to keep fostering them. And because this has all the potential of becoming a very important bilateral relationship and part of Israel's relationship with the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going back to Janusz Makuch and the Jewish Culture Festival, that became de facto a festival of Israeli culture. Can you explain to us how did it happen and how, in other words, why the festival that was born in diaspora actually focuses primarily on Israeli culture, and also do you think it's somehow it's related that you were awarded Yakir Israel prize from the hands of former ambassador of Israel to Poland, Mrs. Anna Azari, that actually, it's a sign of a recognition that emphasizes bringing the Israeli culture closer to the Polish audience. You need to unmute yourself, Janusz, please.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
All right, I'm so sorry. I just wanted, before I start, I want to start from my remark to the actual answer to the Jerzy Wójcik, right? Who wrote, "For the whole my life, I've been trying to build the reconciliation between Poles and Jews. It seems that I'm not a reliable person. As Janusz Makuch said, don't trust me." Jerzy, you missed the point. I didn't think about the people like you. I didn't blame the people like we. I rather mentioned about the politicians, basically speaking, politicians, people who are, just throwing the words like stones, but these words means nothing, are empty. I said very clearly that we and you also are the people of deeds. And this is the most important thing. We should continue that in spite of anything which is surrounding us. And, just as we all remember 2 years ago, look, we are trying, okay, Yossi said he's trying to build a bridge. I'm not gonna build a bridge. I'm trying to create the space, Beseder. And so we've been trying for many, many years. We put our efforts, our mind, our energy, our love, our passion. We strongly believe that this so-called bridge of reconciliation, a so-called space of a common recognition and a mutual respect is possible. And suddenly, like 2 years ago, there is one guy who suddenly became the prime minister of Polish government. And he said, Polish prime minister says Jews perpetrated Holocaust too. Are you kidding me, man? What we should think about it? I tell you what we should think about it. Nothing. We just continue what we've been started to create many, many years ago. Temporarily, this guy is a prime minister of my government. That's what I said. Don't trust them. Don't even listen to them. Do what you started to do. Do what you believe it's worth to be done. And that's what we've been doing actually from 32 years. And you, Julia, asked me about the Israelis aspect of the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow. Yes, when I was 28 years old guy, on 1988, thank God I was stupid enough, but also crazy and brave enough. So I called my festival a Jewish Culture Festival. I didn't call it, even I had a really strong right, let's say Ashkenazi Culture Festival or Yiddish Culture Festival or Galicianer Festival or whatever. No, I called it Jewish Culture Festival, and later it's occurred that it was a fantastic idea because it was like a huge vacuum, like a huge space. Especially I realized that after my first visit to Israel, to Yerushalayim, where all these different parts and sparks of a Jewish world, Jewish cultural world were inside of this. So this is a festival which is, the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow is a festival about the Jewish life. I want to repeat it. The Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow is a festival about the Jewish life. Yes, we also treat very seriously the past, but we treat the past as the source of inspiration. You know, you have a Torah, you have a text of Torah, and if you go to the Talmud, you have a core of the text, and around this text is a lot of interpretations. So we are the people who are trying to interpret the past, but we are still think about the future, not about what will happen in 5 years, what will happen in 10 years, I don't know, but what is going on inside of me nowadays in terms of the past. And I have also in my mind our common relations between Jews and Poles. And how to say that, I would like to say that, in contrary to the popular belief, especially in our government, that Poles were born only for the one beautiful, noble reason to save Jewish lives, I disagree. I completely disagree. So I'm focused on the life, and I'm trying to emphasize how life is important for all of us. And only life can connect us. I'm just starting. Julia, want to say something?
Yeah, I want to
ask me a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask you a question. I asked you about the Yakir Israel, and we hear.
Yeah, and I'm continuing. Don't worry. You will find the answer in a moment. So that's we are focused on the life, because we don't want to still, talk about the past and what happened. I mentioned when I spoke the first time that we are trying to create the space over the river of history and also over the river of Holocaust, which doesn't mean that we treat Holocaust lightly. Of course that no. And I found this life, a different kind of life in Israel. That's what I focus on Israel. I'm a Polish Zionist, and I'm very proud of that. And I don't care if people like it or not. It's my choice, it's my festival, it's my life. You can follow me or not. So we don't want to live in a ghetto of mind. We don't want to live in a ghetto of prejudice, of stereotypes. We are following the life. And once again, the center of the Jewish life and the center of the Jewish culture is Israel, at least for me.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time, so I would like to ask Yossi about what should be our priority in the relation and developing the relationship between Poles and Israelis. Yossi?
First of all, I totally agree with Janusz about we are very similar from both sides of the Mediterranean. We are ambassadors. I'm a Polish ambassador in Israel, and Janusz is an Israeli ambassador in Poland. I think when I'm talking about the bridge is not like blaming the Polish or somebody else for what happened 70 years ago. The bridge is to reconnect, although the past is bitter and tragic, and looking towards the future. This is the most important thing. I mean, for example, next month, in November 10th, there will be another exhibition of my works in Poznan, in the Academy, which will be virtual, totally a virtual 3D exhibition about the COVID-19. And one of the works I'm showing is old Jewish prayer against the plague, against the pandemic in Hebrew, in Poland. I'm connecting the past, my tradition, with actual wishes for future vaccination and future finding together a cure for this pandemic. So this is when I'm saying the past we cannot ignore, but we have to think about the future, and we have to operate as much as we can together to have a mutual cultural relationship, because the culture is the spirit of all things. Without culture, we are robots. We're dead. I mean, this is the most. We have a very important task in educating, in learning from each other. We have like a big, maybe burden on our shoulders to continue these relationship, and I was so moved by the fact that Karolina said that she was influenced by the Jewish festival. I think it's so important. Also, when I meet students in HIT, in Holon Institute of Technology, that were exposed to the Polish culture, and they are so grateful. I think we made our mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question to Karolina. Before you mentioned that you built mixed family in Israel of Israeli-Polish components. So and also you worked in the Polish school in Tel Aviv. Can you share with us your experience about working with children from mixed marriages and who share two different cultural backgrounds? How does it influence? What does it? How can you relate to this?
Well, first of all, maybe let's explain shortly what is the Polish school. I don't work there anymore. Unfortunately, I needed to resign this year, but I still keep all of my kids in my heart, and the teachers as well. It's a school which is made in a cooperation with, or actually under the Ministry of Education of Poland. And it's a school which is in every place in the world where there is a Polish diaspora. So it's also here in Tel Aviv. And it is being addressed to the families which are Polish Israeli, so mainly to them, but not only, sometimes also to the Polish families who just are living here and they want to send their kids to the Polish school. So it's just once a week, in this case on Tuesdays in the evening. There are lessons of Polish language, culture, geography and history. And it is and it is a big honor to teach these kids, which are absolutely amazing, coming back from so different backgrounds and families, which are sometimes mixed also religiously, which brings the whole new topics and new all the time new discussions on our lessons. And I think that first of all, the big I was amazed to see that the mothers, usually there are Polish mothers who bring kids to this school, how much they are involved in really taking care of their knowledge of the Polish language. They can come here from cities which are very, very far away from Tel Aviv, come with a car for many hours just for the child to sit for these few hours in the evening after their Israeli school and study about Poland and its culture. You can see here how it is important to keep this contact and keep this language among the kids. And also the kids are amazing themselves because they bind two worlds. They come from such a different backgrounds, and it is very funny to see scenes that you would never be able to see in the school in Poland. For example, Orthodox kids standing and saluting to the Polish anthem because their father told her that this is how you are supposed to sing the Polish anthem while saluting. You would never hear a discussion that once I almost fainted during the lesson. I just needed to keep myself straight when the kids started to, during some kind of a very heated debate in Israeli politics, they started to fight in Polish on my lesson if Bibi should go home or if Bibi should still be the prime minister, or what to do with the Orthodox people if they should have still this influence on the Israeli reality. And they fighted on it in Polish about it during my lesson. These are the scenes that showed that these kids are actually living in a completely different dimension in this little Poland that we are trying to create here in such families which are from different backgrounds. Of course, I would be extremely happy to see in the school also kids who whose parents or one of the parents don't come from Poland directly, but for example has Polish roots. I had one student like this who actually taught herself Polish from the scratch, and she was one of the most talented students of mine. There are also such kids. And each of them is paying really a big price and really wanting to keep the contact with the Polish language and with the Polish culture. And if I may just say, these are the real ambassadors of Poland in Israel in the future, not politicians, definitely not, but the kids, but the youth, but the culture. And I truly believe in its mission. I hope that Polish school will be still financed. I know that this is not a common thing, that Poland is one of the little number of countries who has this kind of school abroad. I hope this project will be continued and that the kids will be still able to attend it, because this is how we are also creating the new generation and the dialogue.
Thank you. Actually, the Polish Institute also has collaborated with the Polish school. We have invited the pupils to use our library, because we have books also mainly in Polish, also in the translations of Polish literature. So we also hope that you will continue, they will continue their mission.
I can't wait my son to be old enough to come.
Thank you all the panelists, dear panelists, for your time, for your contribution. It was truly fascinating. I wish us all to experience more of fruitful collaboration. I hope that we will continue our conversations outside of the webinar and outside of the internet, and we'll be able to meet you in reality and truly cherish the relations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia, for the public and cultural diplomacy panel.